permission sets. This is, of anything inside of Echo, one of the most powerful tools, but it's also one of the things that can throw people off. Permission sets are simply a group of users and a group of things that they have permission to do. So on the surface, I think it's fairly straightforward, but let me give you a couple of quick examples and we'll dive into how this works. If you're inside of Echo as an admin and you've created a new chat widget for a new website, you can create that chat widget, get it all configured, add it to the website. Everything's awesome, right? Except nobody's seeing any of the chats coming in. Well, that's because there's an important step. You have to create that communication channel. It's kind of step one, whether that's a new phone number for texting or WhatsApp or it's a new Facebook page, etc. You got to do that. But then there's another part two, and that's giving a set of users or a user permission to be able to see that and interact with it. So by default, Echo doesn't show you anything happening inside of the system as just a regular user logged in unless you have permission to see it. And that actually extends to, really, I said regular user, but that extends to every user. So even if you're an admin, if you haven't given yourself permission to see that particular thing, then it won't show up for you. And you may create something new and you're like, what is going on? I can't see this inside of Echo. It must be broken. Well, it could be. We're not saying it isn't, but more than likely, it's a permission set issue. Hop over in here and let's get started. We'll kind of show you everything there is about permission sets. So what the first thing we have to do is we have to just create a permission set, and that's located in the upper right-hand corner. And here we just simply give it a name, demo permission set. This name that you give it will be able to be seen by all of your Echo responder users. So the users that log into Echo that are talking to seekers, they can see this name. And then of course, you'll be able to see it from a reporting standpoint as well. So once we create that new, demo permission set, then over here I'm going to hit edit. And it's really just two things that you're going to do. You're going to add user accounts to this. So you're going to say these are the users that will have access to this. And then you're going to go in and give them permission to do something. So here's where you're going to go in and find these different things that you want them to have permission to. So like here's two chats that I see here. Here's a phone number that we could use. Here's something with WhatsApp. Here's an email. And so I could kind of just go through and put those things in and have those listed over here on the side. And that's it. Here's the set of users and here's the permissions that they have. Now, if you've done this, it is possible that you'll have to get these users, Demo Admin, Demo Smith, and Jennifer Smith. It's possible if they were logged in, they may need to log out and log back in order to receive the new permission set. But that's just worst case. So other than that, this is the deal. So as you create your users and as you create your communications channels, you want to make sure and add these different permissions in. Okay, now let's get into the weeds just a little bit and let's talk about some of the permissions that you have available to you over here. Now, some of these at the top, these are things that are real specific to this particular demo instance. These are emails and chats and phone numbers that we have created and Facebook pages that we have created. But starting here with missed calls and going down, these are things that are specific to, well, not specific. They're not specific to, every instance has access to all of these is what I'm trying to say. So what are these? Well, for those of you doing phone calls, if you're doing voice phone calls, these are the following ones that are going to be interesting to you. Missed calls. This lets you see calls that you missed so you can call them back. A dialer so that you can type the phone number for the seeker and just make a call. See your call history. See the call queue of who's in queue waiting. See your contacts for those calls so you can call them back. Call transferring, that lets you transfer the call to another user. do an internal call from one user to another user, missed calls in your queue of phone calls, be able to do phone conference calls, and be able to see the full phone number for the seeker. By default, Echo hides that full phone number to protect both your responders and the seekers, but there are certain use cases where you may want to have that. Hide the phone status toggle, indicating that the user can indicate when they want to be online or not. If you're using the scheduler, you may not want them to be able to toggle that because you'll just schedule them for certain times. Show all claimed. This is new, so this is different from phone. So this is the ability to see all claimed conversations outside of just the conversations that you are having. So you may have a group of users that you want to be able to see everything that's happening across all of Echo. You would give them the permission to show all claimed, and then they could see all the active conversations that your ministry is having. Call waiting is another phone feature there that gives you the ability to receive a call while on another call. Restricted schedule. This is in conjunction with the scheduling system, and this gives you the ability to have users only be able to interact with Echo during their scheduled time. So if you want to restrict your volunteers to a certain time and only that time, you don't want them accessing Echo outside of that, they'll be able to log in, but they won't be able to take conversations until their shift starts. Likewise, we have an unrestricted schedule, and this is again to be used in conjunction with the scheduling system to do that. So advanced queue. Advanced queue gives you the ability to have where we're renaming this to the word inbox, and so but currently it says queue, and so where you're inside there, by default, it just kind of shows you a list. But if you have the advanced queue, it gives you these options to filter and sort what is in the queue by some different parameters to kind of give you a little more functionality around if your ministry has lots of things coming in the queue from lots of different sources, this is something you may want to have so that you can go in and sort those a little better. Conversation milestones is this concept that we've done where users can go in and do what's called review and continue. And what this does is we found certain asynchronous conversations like a Facebook messenger or email or something like that. As it's going back and forth for a long period of time, it gets a little difficult for the ministry to have an idea of like, man, this conversation has been going on for a year, but we don't really even know what it's about. So review and continue as part of conversation milestones. If that is chosen, then that set of users from the drop-down menu list, they have the option to review and then continue the conversation. It's still continue to route to that particular responder, but they have indicated kind of, hey, here's an outcome of what this conversation was about. So an example would be, I'm in a conversation with somebody. It's kind of obvious it's going to take a while. It's a bigger, longer conversation. And maybe as a ministry, we've made a procedural choice that once a month at a minimum, you should close out of your conversations to give us an outcome so we kind of know what happened during that month. Well, with review and continue, I can do that maybe on day 7. I've had a good conversation with a seeker. I'm kind of waiting to then get back in touch with them, but I still want them to come to me if they respond. Well, then I can set up review and continue, and then from there, all I do is review and continue. It brings up the outcome screen just like you would when you close a conversation. They would choose the outcome, put any tags, anything that they want in it, and save that, but it's still connected to them. It's still in their active conversations area, and they can still continue to interact with that seeker. So it's a way for you as a reporting system be able to understand like, okay, this is what we did, and this is what we talked about this day for the seeker, but that seeker is still routing to that particular responder on your team. Okay, so that's conversation milestones. Outbound phone call proxy. This one is if you have a phone system in place with Echo and you want your responders to have the ability to call a phone number that's inside of Echo, we'll call it phone number 123. So they can dial phone number 123, and when they do, it's going to then prompt them to then dial the number of the seeker. So what's nice about this is then your volunteer responders can dial out through Echo. They can then call the seeker directly. And when they do that, what makes that exciting is they no longer have to show their personal phone number. It's going to come from the phone number of Echo. And depending on if you have systems like call recording turned on with Echo, of course, following legal rules in the countries that you're working in, then you have the ability to record that call if you want to do that. So you have those kinds of functionalities to do with an outbound call. So essentially, it's like dialing a number that then turns an Echo number that then turns around and dials the seeker and comes from Echo. It's able to be tracked, measured, and recorded. And if it was long distance, the long distance charges would be applied to you, not to your individual responder. So that's outbound phone call proxy. Call-based dispositions. So we do have some ministries who have volunteers that are scheduled for between 2 and 4 p.m. as an example, and starting at 2 p.m. their phone just rings and they receive calls directly on their phone from seekers that are calling into Echo. Well, because they're just answering on their phone, they may not be next to a computer with Echo. So at the end of that call, they can just hang up by pressing star, and then it'll just immediately start telling them press 1 for your first outcome, press 2 for your second outcome, etc. And they would just press their keypad to choose those options so that you can have really rich reporting while still having a user using Echo, where a responder using Echo, where all they're doing is using their phone. Okay, the AutoAvailable call scheduler, this is the ability to set it up so that users, again, around phone and scheduling, you would make them auto-available during their shift. So if you scheduled them from 2 to 4, like I said, then starting at 2 p.m. During that day or multiple days of the week, they would automatically be enabled and would begin receiving calls if a seeker had called in. Okay, just 4 more to go. We have a share full resource. This gives you the ability to not only share just a paragraph that you can all do by default inside of resources, but this gives you the ability to push one button and pull over the entire resource into a message. Some ministries really like this and use this a lot, and other ministries are like, no. Our volunteers may accidentally click that, and then they're pushing over, a 20-page document. So each ministry has different opinions, and even inside that, you may have different sets of users that need different things. That's the whole point of permission sets, is that you can give users different permissions to do that entirely. So, next, we have the hide talk area. This is a place for you to be able to toggle that and hide that so that only certain users see that and others can't. We have the ability to have the client data entry area. So something that most of you probably don't know about in Echo is we do have a secure app portion of this that lets you import data about a user from your phone directly using a secure encrypted format. So if you wanted to, you're on the go, you've got your phone or your iPad or whatever in front of you, then you could ask a seeker for their information, type that in, and you could do that through this client data entry. The reason why, now that I've explained that, the reason why we have the hide talk area is sometimes we have users that are using the inserting the client data information in, and we just want them to just use the app as that. We don't want them to actually have active conversations. It's more of like a data collection tool to then follow up with later. That's why you would hide the talk area. The talk area is where you have all of the conversations inside of Echo. Lastly is the hide client email address. This is set up so that if you don't want your responders to be able to directly see the client's email address as it's been put in, you can hide that here. So those are all the options inside. And then of course at the top you're going to have whatever chats and text and emails and phone calls and Facebook and WhatsApp and all of those things are going to show up. Telegram, all of that's going to show up here that you can give permission to. So whew, that's a lot. There's a lot of things inside permission sets. So let me summarize. You've created something new in Echo, a new user or a new communication channel, and you're not seeing it. It looks like it's not working. Probably it's a permission set. So first thing to do is go in and say, well, do I have this user has permission to do this thing? And that includes you as an admin as well. So even as an admin, you got to give yourself permission to do things. Why are we doing permission sets? Well, because when you start having 100 users or 1,000 users or 5,000 users, it's much easier to just add a person into a permission set that's already fully configured with all those different permissions. It's a lot quicker and easier to do than to just start from zero each time and go to each person and give them permission to each thing that you want them to do. So it's going to take a lot probably on the front end when you're first having one user and then 20 permissions. But for user number 2, you just drag that user and put them in and you're done. So that's the beauty of permission sets, is you can have as many as you want. They are additive, which means that they add on top of each other. So if I'm part of 2 permission sets and I don't have permission to chat on permission set number 1, and I do have permission to chat with my particular website on permission set number 2, together I get everything that number 1 offers and everything number 2 has. So that's the way permission sets work. I know there's a lot to it, but this is the real power of Echo. You can get really granular and really set it up so that it only does what you want it to do. So enjoy permission sets. They will become your best friend inside of Echo and your worst enemy if you forget to do them and you're like, it's all broken, nothing's working. That's where it's happening. So thanks for taking the time to watch this long video on permission sets.